All right, so we left off looking at mitochondrial inheritance, um, the idea that we inherit the DNA or the genes in our mitochondria from only our mother. Um, and notice we've got this family tree here that shows this inheritance pattern. And notice that if a mother has a particular characteristic found in her mitochondria, all of her offspring will get it. But look here, here's this son who inherited from his mother. But then when he has children, the woman he's with does not have this characteristic, so therefore none of their children will have it. The dad does not pass on this characteristic because, again, that mitochondrial trait only comes from mom. This daughter here, she passes it on to all her kids. Okay. Um, So these family trees are also called in your book human, or are also called pedigrees. And so here's just a simple description of a pedigree and how you have circles or females, males or squares. Um, the lines that connect two individuals show that they are having kids. Presumably they're married, maybe not, but they're having kids together. Um, and the lines that go down from them connect to their children. Um, when circles are filled in some way, it usually designates that that individual has a characteristic of some sort. Um, and if it's not filled in, it shows that they do not express this trait. Um, it's ideal in pedigrees or family trees to have all the generations on a separate line. You want to keep it relatively organized, again, with lines connecting the parents and then lines coming down to show who their offspring are. Um, so this is essentially what you're going to create with your family tree project. Um, and as you'll see in the instructions, you'll want to have 3 generations and ideally at least 12 individuals. Um, now here, I want you to take a look at this family tree or this pedigree. It's much more complex than the previous one. But again, we've got females as circles, males as squares, with lines connecting all the individuals. One different thing here is that this is looking at a particular trait that's a recessive trait, and they're designating females who they know are carriers of this trait. And then the filled in ones show individuals who have this particular trait. In this case, it's hemophilia, which is again a recessive trait. So in order to have it, you have to inherit it from your mom and your dad. It's also an X-linked trait. Okay. So again, if you look at the Punnett square, this is the situation you're going to have with the female with 2 X's, the male with 1. Um, so what do you notice about this pedigree and who has um, this recessive condition? Well, it's only males that have it. There are some females that are carriers, but there are no males that have this condition. Um, so essentially, what you have is a situation in which um, the fathers all have the normal form of the gene. The mothers have a normal form, and they might be a carrier. And under that situation, you're going to get these results in the offspring. Notice that under this situation, none of the daughters will have the disease, and essentially half the sons right here will have this disease. So it only shows up in the males. In order for a female to have it, it would require that her father has the condition. Okay. Um, so why are X-linked recessives that are, particularly that are detrimental in some way, more common in males. Well, again, that requires that the mom be a carrier and the dad have it. And if it's some condition that's detrimental to one's health, males that have the condition tend not to have kids. Now, you notice that's a little different here. Leopold had hemophilia. He probably had a more mild form of it, and but his wife was not a carrier. Now, again, if he has it, essentially all his daughters will be carriers because they're going to get the little h from dad. That's the only thing they get from dad. So his one daughter was a carrier. None of his sons will have it, again, because his wife was not a carrier, so none of his sons had it. Um, but whose family tree is this? Let's see, William, Harry, ooh, Elizabeth, Queen of England. So there's Elizabeth right there, Prince Philip. This is Prince Charles. This is Lady Diana. And there's William and Harry. Wasn't able to find an updated one, but there would be, go away, there would be Kate. And they have a son named George. And as I understand that she is pregnant again, but I'm not sure if they've determined whether she has going to have a boy or a girl. So this is the family tree for the royal families of Europe dating back to Victoria and Edward. And here's Queen Victoria, the well-known Queen Victoria. It's thought that this trait, this hemophilia, arose in her. A mutation occurred, and so she was a carrier of it. So you can see she had a son with the disease, and she has two daughters who are carriers, and they married into various families, and the trait got passed on. The most, I guess, perhaps infamous branch of the family would be over here. So Alice married Louis the Fourth, and they had a daughter named Alex, and she married Nicholas, who was the Tsar of Russia. Um, they had a son, Alexis, who had hemophilia. There were also four daughters. Um, Notice there's all question marks by them because we don't know whether they were carriers or not because they were all assassinated during the Russian Revolution. All the kids and mom and dad. Um, and it's thought, because they had a son with hemophilia, that the Tsar brought in certain people to help with this condition that maybe compromised his position politically, and that's what in part led to again, the Russian Revolution. All right, so you're going to be creating a family tree for your family, again, with 3 generations, at least 12 people. So yours will probably look something more like this, and you're going to be mapping out the inheritance pattern for a particular trait. And again, we went through these in class, and this is something I want you to work on at home. Again, you can look at something like tongue rolling, widow's peak, um, the ear lobe, whether it's attached or lobed. Um, let's see, you can look at eye color. You can look at dimples, whether or not you have dimples. You can look at freckles. These are all good ones. If you decide to do eye color, when you sample the people in your family, you need to break it down into 3 groups. That is, they have brown eyes, they have blue eyes, or basically not brown or blue, everything else. So this third category will include green, gray, hazel. Okay, so you got 3 categories: brown, blue, and not brown or blue. So that's how you want to categorize family. So start sampling your family. Well, pick a trait first of all, and ideally you want to pick a trait that has some variation in it. Not everyone the same, because that's not a terribly interesting trait to look at. So some variation, find out what phenotype um, the members of your family have, whether they have a Buddha's peak or they don't have it. And go ahead and try just creating a little example of your family tree. And then in class, we'll talk more about the details you need to have on it and how you label them. And ideally, you're also going to figure out the genotype for each individual as best you can. Um, all right, so we'll talk about that some more in class.